Welcome back, everybody. The snow's melting, the birds are chirping, and I got 5 more games for you for this spring. Now, I wanted to do something a little bit different. Last time I did the fall games, I was thinking about Halloween, trying to incorporate that holiday. In the winter, I actually don't remember if I did anything for Christmas, but I was thinking about it. This season, I was thinking, are there any holidays that I can incorporate? There is one. Easter. Unfortunately, the game that I played for Easter did not qualify. Now, normally I would be hesitant to include something like this. It's just some guy's little indie game. I doubt he put a lot of effort into it. But then I thought, no, I did play it. I should talk about it just as a caution to people. For full disclosure, I dropped the game. What game is it, you ask? Easter Bunny, which you can find on Steam, but I do not recommend that you play. What it is a little Easter egg hunt. You play the bunny, you're trying to hide the Easter eggs. For some reason, you're hiding them in plain sight. And these little twerps in the neighborhood want to spoil Easter, I guess. You know, they can't just go to bed and wake up tomorrow and do an Easter egg hunt. No, they're out the day before, and they are pulling up all your eggs that you hide and getting you in trouble. So the game has a lot of issues with its cat and mouse mechanics. It's very frustrating to play. Pass on this one. Let's move into the 5 real games now that I have to recommend to you. In case any of you are watching this for the first time, I do these games in order of least spring-like to most spring-like. The first game here is trying to still capture that Easter theme, and it is Tiny Toon Adventures Buster's Hidden Treasure, played on the Sega Genesis. But before we get into the game, I just have one question for everybody. Do you remember how the title's spelled for Tiny Toons and Looney Tunes? Is it Toons, like cartoon, or is it Tunes, like a song? I'll give you a couple moments to think about it. And the answer is, it's both. So for some reason, Looney Tunes is spelled Tunes, like a song, and Tiny Toon Adventures is spelled Toon. Also, it's not plural, it's singular for some reason. But there you go, sharing a little piece of trivia with you, I suppose. Moving on to the game itself and how this game embodies spring. Well, it doesn't. I mean, you've got the nice flowers, you've got a cool color palette here, but really it's the fact that I was looking for an Easter Bunny substitute, and so you're playing as Buster Bunny, you've got these vibrant, colorful levels to explore, and honestly, it's not the worst game. From what I understand, this is a childhood favorite for some people. I did not have a Genesis growing up. However, I do love the Looney Tunes and the Tiny Toon series. And this game thankfully had some faithful recreations from the cartoons. For example, some of that slapstick comedy. There's instances where you might be sprinting along, you come across a sign that's laid down on the ground, and then when you run over it, it springs upward, stops you dead in your tracks. And that's just the one example that I can remember, but there were other instances of that kind of humor. Otherwise, what you have here, you can tell by looking at it on screen, is a fairly basic platformer. The collectathon elements are optional. The funny thing about this one, though, is that these carrots you see me collecting here, you don't get 100 and then an extra life. No, you get 100 and then you get a special ability. Specifically, you get 1 use of a special ability. And that ability varies depending on which level you play. Typically what happens is you summon a character to your aid and they clear out the enemies that are on screen. The movement mechanics were a little bit unusual. That said, it was easy enough to be precise with them. So the jump can feel a little bit floaty at times, but it does respond well to you holding the jump button for a short or a long press. Also, the side-to-side movement, even when in the air, is very easy to control. It just takes a little bit of getting used to. It looks a little weird on the screen, but you will develop a knack for it. The only thing that I have an issue with is there is a sprint feature in the game, but it's very easy to collide with things on the levels because there's not that much flat, open terrain. You have a slide tackle that you can use for dealing with the enemies while you're sprinting, but you better have some tight reactions to kill them in time. So Buster's Hidden Treasure, a decent platformer overall. I don't want to overrate it, but I did really enjoy the boss fights. Those were varied and quite a bit of fun. The next game is another childhood favorite for even more of you, Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. Game that I actually first experienced on the Game Boy Advance, but you're seeing footage captured on the Super Nintendo. I don't think I need to explain why this fits in as a spring game. Just look at these early levels, look at the pastel colors that they use, look at the decorations as well with flowers and butterflies scattered everywhere, little green shrubs that perfectly fit the season. It is a wonderful spring game. However, coming in at number 4, there's 3 games that embody spring better than Yoshi's Island. And that is because every world changes the aesthetic of the game a little bit. So the first 2 worlds, they will fully immerse you, but then as you continue playing, it almost takes you on a journey through the different seasons. You get to experience different elements. Some levels feel a little more summery with a jungle theme. Other levels might feel more wintry as you're finally up in the snowy areas. You get the idea. It's a Mario game that shouldn't surprise anyone that there's different worlds with those different themes. And do I really need to explain the gameplay? Maybe. If you've only played the mainline games, you haven't touched this one yet, this is definitely a fun one to go back to. It takes a little bit of getting used to handle the controls and the way that the eggs come out, but once you've had 5 or 10 minutes with it, you'll have your aim down, no problem. Love the amount of secrets in this game, love how many different areas there are, different hidden objects as well that you can discover by firing eggs in random locations. Typically, there are some hints, some clues, maybe coins point to that area on the level. You'll figure it out as you play. You'll see some things that I for sure missed myself. Quality-wise, it's certainly an upgrade over Tiny Toon Adventures. Not to disparage that game too much, but let's be honest, this is a fantastic game, probably the best game on this list, and a high recommendation. If you're only going to play one this spring, even though this one, like I said, doesn't embody spring to the fullest, it's got a wonderful presentation, fun mini games, cool power-ups and levels, and who doesn't love playing with the different colors of Yoshis? This is the best game. The third game on this list is Spring Falls, a very simple puzzle game where you're just trying to redirect the water that comes down this waterfall, activate certain tiles, change elevations, and saturate the ground next to the water. If you saturate the right tiles, you will water this flower and it will bloom. Make every flower on the level bloom and you get to advance. Some of you might be going, oh come on, what does this game have for spring that the other games don't? But I really like the theme of flowers blooming. I like the idea of nature growing from something small to something big as we go from the ends of winter to the beginning of summer. And so yes, even in something as simple as this, where you're just making one plant at a time grow, I think that it is a good representation of springtime. And this game is so serene. There's no timers, there's no rush. There are no tricks where you have to catch the water as it runs and quickly elevate one of the tiles. No, nothing like that. You're simply thinking things through and trying to make the right decisions. No reflexes are required here. So you can take your time, you can enjoy the backgrounds, you can enjoy the music if that's your thing. I'm not going to tell you how to play the game, I'm just recommending it to you. For as simple as this game is, I do have to commend the water mechanics. I love seeing the water interact with the tiles differently depending on what the water level is. I love how you can actually affect the water level depending on how many tiles are depressed. So obviously, when more tiles are depressed, you have a larger area that the water can spread out inside. So the water level goes down and it might not be enough to saturate the tiles that are beside it. So sometimes you have to redo a puzzle because you may have depressed too many of those tiles. Redo it, see if you can play the level a little more efficiently to maintain the higher water level. So great job on the physics, and like I said, just a quiet, relaxing puzzle game. Next up, the most unique game on this list, probably the most unique game that I've ever recommended in this series, Piku Niku. You play as this oblong red character with hilarious animations and his funny little stick legs, and you just have a blast on this adventure. I hate when this term is used for games that don't deserve it, but this truly is a charming experience. There's no other better way to describe it. It's got a little bit of quirkiness, but it doesn't ham it on like some of these indie JRPGs. It's got great humor and funny comedic timing, but it's not overused and thrown on every character in their dialogue. Also, like I mentioned earlier with the Tiny Toon game, there's some slapstick humor here, and when you combine it with the animations, you will have some laugh out loud moments. So, not something that I usually highlight when I play games. I don't think games typically have great senses of humor. This is a rare exception. So anyways, what do you actually have going on here? What's the gameplay like for this game that no one's heard of? And how does it embody springtime? Well, let's answer the latter question first. You can see here a lot of it has to do with the color palette and this first zone. We'll just call it that for the sake of this explanation. This first zone with the baby blue and the greens for the grass, slightly more vibrant green for the trees, with the combinations of the birds and their sound effects, you do feel like it is a proper springtime environment. At least that's how I felt when I played the game, and I'm truly being honest about that. This is the second highest game on the list. As for the gameplay, while you're adventuring around, rolling, tumbling, and just watching your legs flail all over the place, you will be interacting with different characters, getting bits and pieces of the story, dealing with a megalomaniac antagonist. It's fun, doesn't take itself too seriously, obviously, but I feel like it still provides the right kind of stakes for a world like this. The NPCs, sometimes when you talk to them, you'll be entered into a mini game. The mini games change up the gameplay a little bit, so instead of this kind of light platforming, you might do something that's a little more action-oriented. Later on, you will have more experiences with puzzles. A lot of them optional, some of them mandatory, but the mandatory ones aren't bad by any means. Really, what you're getting with this game is the product of someone wanting to make something fun. The animations are really cute, the characters are funny, nothing about it is offensive in any way, and I don't mean with the dialogue, anything that's explicitly offensive, like foul language. I mean, from top to bottom, none of the gameplay is going to bog you down too much. None of the action or the platforming sequences are too demanding, but I don't want to spoil anything, I don't want to talk too at length about anything, because it is a relatively short game. So Pikuniku for a fun, charming, unique experience. One, if you're looking for a light platformer, or if you like a little more humor in your games, you will have a great time with this one. Finally, the number one game on this list, some of you may have guessed it from the opening montage, is Flower. What is this exactly? Is this a game? Is this a tech demo? How long is it? How does it play? Kind of looks like a movie experience. Honestly, it's a little bit of all of those things. Even though there's a game here, it's a very short experience. Only took me about 1 hour, but no, I did not get 100% achievements. For that, you're going to need to replay some of the levels and go on a sort of pseudo collectathon. You are a force of nature. That's the best way I can describe it. You are a force of nature, primarily controlling the wind, and you are going through these levels, picking up flowers and flower petals, and just amassing a miniature army. The army doesn't do anything for you, it just looks pretty as it trails behind you, and you are carving through the landscapes, going up and down the hills, passing through more flower patches, just to open them up and make them bloom and flourish. There's usually a very simple progression going from point A to point B, and if you do that, tagging the right flowers, it opens up the next area for you to move on to. There's so much fun to be had with the sounds, and as you're playing through the level, it's almost like you're making music. When you hit up different flowers, you produce different notes. And if you hit up a ton of flowers in a row, let's say 20, 30, or even 80 or 100, you are going through this progression of notes, producing chords and harmonies and all kinds of great sounds and music. And it's just not something that you would typically experience in a normal game or in a more popular genre of video game. I want to highlight one special moment of the game, which was maybe on the second or the third level. I'm looking around at the start because at this point I've realized that there are some sort of collectathon elements to this game. So I'm just seeing if there's some other places to explore, some hidden flowers that I might be able to tag, and I see this cave entrance. But as I approach it and I can't enter, I realize, okay, well, it's not a cave entrance, I guess. It's not a playable part of the level. It's just there to look cool. But later on, as I continue to play through the level, I got swept up in an area that felt like an auto runner. So I didn't have too much control of the wind, but just enough where I was able to veer off course, and veering off course led to a secret area, led to a cave system, and I was able to emerge from the cave system from that original cave entrance that I saw at the beginning of the level. And what that did was transport me back to the Nintendo 64 era, back to the games that I grew up with that had a lot of empty space but intentionally placed assets. Little things that if you put in the time to explore, the developers rewarded you with some sort of an experience or a direct reward for your character. So that is Flower, something that I do struggle to call a game, but regardless, an experience that I do recommend. And that is a wrap for the 5 games. Hope you all enjoyed. If you have any questions about the titles, please just ask me in the comments and I can brief you on the details a little bit more. Otherwise, everybody, have a great season. I'll see you at the end as we do 5 games for summer. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.